From yesterday's class, were all of you able to create record pages, modify record pages?
Yes, yes.
I want answers from all the students, not just
Hello.
3 people who regularly answer.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, can you create a one-time path?
Path, one more time.
Yes, sir, I have created that and I have activated also. Then also that
Okay.
is not showing on UI.
So on the lightning record page, did you add that path?
Yes, yes, sir, I have added.
Okay, no issues. After we finish today's class, we'll walk through that path, because since we are already starting the class late, so after this,
Okay, okay.
those who want to join, leave, they can leave, and then we'll walk through that. Okay, no
Yeah,
issues.
sure, sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Any queries? Any questions? No? If no questions, then good. Because what today we'll be starting with is, as I told you yesterday, oh, I think my screen is not visible. Right. Okay. Let me know once my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Right? Good. Now, what I had told you yesterday, that, oh, I should have duplicated it. Hold on. That other than all the standard elements we have, right? What we can do is we can also add custom coded elements onto the UI also, right? Like you see here, this component I have, if I drag this component here, this component becomes visible, right? So, but what is the purpose of having a component here? Let me just save this and activate. Let's make it as org default. Next, save, right? Right. So now, even though I've added something which I've custom coded, but right now it is pretty useless. It's just a text, right? So how do you build elements into code and then you display them on the UI? So for today, what we will be doing is we will be working with Aura component. Okay, we can also do the same thing with Visualforce and LWC also. Okay, but for LWC, you need to set up VS Code first. So which is why today we will be doing the same with Aura component. Meanwhile, you will also go through what are the things you need to know while writing and how to create Aura component, how to write the syntax, right? So we'll go through the basic functionality of Aura component while we modify something on this UI. So let's take the scenario that we have. Say what I have is all my, say, accounts I can relate with employees now, because on employees I have created a master detail to account, right? A relationship I have created between employees and accounts. So what if I want a separate section here in which I want to display only the accounts, because accounts is to me is more important data. I don't want it along with this files, notes and attachment, all those things. Okay, maybe I want it in a separate thing. Maybe I want some other additional functionalities also. So I want to create a completely new custom UI. Okay. So let's look into how to create an Aura component first. So the first thing obviously is when you're creating something, you have to go to the developer console. For Aura, Visualforce, right? Then Apex classes, everything you have to come to developer console. So let's create a completely new component. What we want is a lightning component, right? What should be the name? I want to display the employee list, right? So I'll name accordingly, employee list. Now you see what all options I am getting here as part of the component configurations. What does it show to me? this component configuration I can select. This is optional. Okay, this same thing we can do in code also. So if I select this, then it will add something into the component which will let that component run on a lightning tab. Similarly for lightning page. In our case, we want to display it on what? A record page. Okay. So in our case, then what we need to do is we need to actually select this, right? But for now, we won't select this. Just know that you can do the same thing from here. Even you can add it to an action, right? On that button click, you want to open a component. So for that, you have to select this, right? But for today, since we are learning the basics, we will know how to add this in code. Okay. So we want to add it to a lightning record page, employee list component. Let's make it something so that Aura component, right? And submit. Now you see what happened. A completely black component got created, right? There is nothing which is available here. Now what I mentioned that we want this to be displayed on the UI, right? So how do you add that? For that, you have to include something as part of the implements tag. Okay. What do you basically do with implements? If any of you have any, other Java or other programming language, you'll know something called interfaces available in many programming languages. What is interface? An interface basically kind of, gives a framework, and based on that framework, you can write more code developing on that. Okay. In different things, it is different. So basically, in Aura, what is the implements does is it basically pulls few properties and adds them to your Aura component. So you can have access to all that. So what we want is this to be available on the page. So whenever manipulating something related to the page, right, the interface you have to use is flexi page, and inside this you have to set what property you want. So what you want is this should be available on this record page, right? So let's have it is available for record home. Now I'll just show you one other thing. Right, let me show you set uh, stuff. Right, I'll show you the documentation for this. Okay, basically what does this do? Can you see this tab which I dragged? Right, can you all see this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is
Yes,
part of
sir.
the Salesforce documentation. So you see here, as part of the interfaces we have, right? There are multiple interfaces we have. So we will be using a few interfaces here today. Now, what are the ones we will be using? The ones we have used is this one, available for record home. What does this do? It means that the component I am creating that I can use on Lightning record pages only, nowhere else. Only Lightning record pages. Now, but in the before option where I was showing you the checkboxes, so there you had all other options also you could select, right? There it was giving you an option of also, selecting for community, right, for app, right? So the other interface for that is available for all page types. So in that list of checkboxes, if I had selected anything other than the record home, then this interface would have automatically got added. And if I had only selected record home, this would have been automatically added. But in our case, for now, what we have done is added it manually, right? Now we need two other things to add. Okay. One is like interface only I'm telling. Let's go with our scenario now. I'm removing the documentation once more. Now, if I want to display data here, just go logically, right? That I need to have a code. My code, what will my code do? It will query all the employee records which are related to this account, right? So if I want that, then what should be the input to my component? My component has to have some input. That input is the details of this account. If my code has details of this account, then only it can get the employees related to this account. So which detail do I need if I want to run the query, right? So let's go to the setup and let's go to account, because now what we will see is the most important field in Salesforce, okay, which is used for everything, which is the ID field. Okay, so here this is a standard object. You cannot see the ID, but an ID exists and you can find the ID of any record. Where do you find that ID? If I go to this account, right, on this UI page, can you see anywhere that the ID present? You cannot. Even in the page layout, you cannot find this ID. But how does Salesforce know it has to open this record? So the ID for any record you can find in the URL. If you open any Salesforce record, you check the URL, you will find the ID there. This is the ID of this record. If I write anywhere, so let's go to the developer console, right? And let's run a query first. Okay. Select ID. Let's just select name. Name from account where ID is equals to what I'm getting from the UI. Right. This is the ID. Execute. You see, it got the account. So this ID is what is always used to store the record's main identification, and not just on the record level. If I go to the employee, so you see all these relationships that were created, right? So all these employee relationships that were created, if I go here, what you see here is parent account and it is a link to that account. If I click on this account, it opens this account, right? But what do you think this field actually has? If I query this field, let's go query this. So this parent account field you see, right? So if I query this, you see here I have the ID. So if I query select uh, parent account, since it is a custom field underscore underscore C from employee where ID is equals to, let me just keep it somewhere in the notepad. I'll need this account ID, right? Where ID is equals to, let's take the opportunity ID. What do you think will come when I run this? Will this business Burlington Textile Corps of America get printed? Okay, sorry, it's a custom object, right? You see, even though on the UI what you are seeing is the name, but in the back end on any relationship, the value which is stored is the ID, the record ID. Okay, so this is the field which maps all the relationships between objects on Salesforce. This field, you see the owner. Here it is showing my name. But do you think if I click on this, my details will open, right? But what is this? You think this is just the name is getting stored? If I query this field also, let me query this field also. I have parent account. Owner ID. Here also it is an ID. Okay. So any and all relationships are always stored using ID. And if you have to query data, what you will query using? You will then also query using IDs. So you got the concept of IDs?
सर मतलब इसका यूज कैसे होएगा, मतलब एक्चुअल एग्जांपल में?
हाँ, अभी अभी एक आईडी का पर्पस क्या है आपको समझ आया? अभी हम उसका उसी को इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे इसमें,
जस्ट
राइट?
एक
आईडी
सर
से आप
रियल
किसी भी
टाइम
रिकॉर्ड को आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हो, उस रिकॉर्ड का यूनिक जो की है, राइट? तो लाइक लेट्स से हियर वी हैड जनरेटेड अ फील्ड एम्प्लॉय कोड, तो आपको लगेगा हम लोग एम्प्लॉय कोड के बेसिस पे आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे, राइट? बट
Yes.
आप सेल्सफोर्स में वो की फील्ड जो सबसे की फील्ड है जिसके बेसिस पे आप रिकॉर्ड्स को ऑलवेज आइडेंटिफाई करोगे, वो कौन सी फील्ड है? वो है आईडी फील्ड। हर ऑब्जेक्ट पे डिफॉल्ट क्रिएट होती है, आईडी आप मॉडिफाई नहीं कर सकते हो, आप जब भी रिकॉर्ड बनाते हो ऑटोमेटिकली आईडी सेट हो जाता है, राइट? सो दैट
Yes, sir.
आईडी इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट फील्ड जिससे आप रिकॉर्ड आइडेंटिफाई करते हो। एंड व्हाई आईडी एंड नॉट सम कस्टम फील्ड व्हिच यू हैव क्रिएटेड? क्योंकि आप जब कोई कस्टम फील्ड सेट करते हो एम्प्लॉय कोड, राइट, फ्रॉम एम्प्लॉय कोड आई कैन नॉट आइडेंटिफाई विच अकाउंट इज लिंक्ड टू दिस, राइट? क्योंकि एम्प्लॉय कोड एक कस्टम फील्ड है, टेक्स्ट है, मैंने डाल दिया, राइट? वैलिडेशन रूल डाला है इसलिए यूनिक है, वैलिडेशन रूल हटा दूंगा तो सबके सेम एम्प्लॉय कोड भी जनरेट हो जाएगा, राइट? बट
Right.
दिस रिलेशनशिप्स जब मेंटेन करने होते हैं कि एक अकाउंट पे मैं अगर जाता हूं तो इस अकाउंट से मेरे रिलेटेड कौन कौन सी अपॉर्चुनिटीज है, तो मैं अगर अपॉर्चुनिटी पे जाता हूं, अपॉर्चुनिटी पे जाके भी आपको देखो डिटेल दिख जाएगा, अपॉर्चुनिटी का ओनर कौन है, एक यूजर का आईडी, कौन से अकाउंट से लिंक्ड है उस अकाउंट का आईडी, लास्ट मॉडिफाई किसने किया था, एक और यूजर का आईडी, राइट? So this ID is what Salesforce uses to identify record.
Yes, sir.
तो आप जब भी रिलेशन बनाते हो तो वहां पे आपका ID फील्ड ही जाएगा. So how IDs will be used? Let me give you an example. अभी मैंने यहाँ पे एक एम्प्लॉय को रन किया, राइट, जहाँ पे ID है ये, तो मैंने यहाँ पे क्या किया था, इस एम्प्लॉय का ID मैंने पेस्ट किया था, वो चल गया, राइट? What
Right,
if instead I do something, एम्प्लॉय नेम फील्ड था, राइट? मेरा सिलेक्ट एम्प्लॉय नेम, वाज इट एम्प्लॉय नेम और जस्ट नेम? आई थिंक इट वाज एम्प्लॉय नेम. लेट्स सी एल्स इट विल गिव एरर. एम्प्लॉय नेम and let's query some other fields from employee. Employee name and employee role, right? Owner ID की जरूरत नहीं है अभी. From employee, what if I just write this, where instead of now querying using ID, what I'll write is where parent account is this. मैं ये अकाउंट की आईडी डाल देता हूँ कि मेरा वो सारे एम्प्लॉयज आप फेच करके लाओ जिनका पेरेंट अकाउंट आईडी में वैल्यू है ये. ओके, इज इट नॉट नेम? व्हाट वाज द फील्ड नेम देन? एम्प्लॉय, वाज इट जस्ट नेम? जस्ट नेम, ओके. You see, I got all the data.
understood, sir.
Right. So because you use IDs, you can uniquely identify any record, even using relations. What if I had made this where created by is, say created by was a field, created by ID, right? I go created by ID is equals to, and let me open my user ID. Do you see my user ID here? Account owner, yes. Link in your tab. Right, you see my user record ID is available. Let me add it this, where the created by ID is this. All employees get, because all were created by me, right? So using this ID, your problem can be solved, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Using this ID, and this ID is available on every object. You query using this, you set using this values, okay? So ID you have to get used to. जब आप डाटा रिट्रीव करने को बोलेंगे आपको, तो आप करोगे। अगर आपके पास कोई आता है कि आप एक काम करो, ये सारे एम्प्लॉयज का पेरेंट एक अकाउंट को बना दो, या सारे एम्प्लॉयज का डिपार्टमेंट एक उसको बना दो, मैनेजर किसी एक बंदे को बना दो, तो आप क्या करोगे? आप ये सारे रोज को ओपन करोगे, मैनेजर फील्ड में सब में कौन सी आईडी पुट करोगे? जिसको नया मैनेजर बनाना है उस यूजर की जो आईडी है वो आईडी आप पुट करोगे। So this record ID is the most important field in Salesforce. Okay. Now in our case, see, I have already solved the problem which I was actually planning to solve. What was our statement that I want to here show all the employees whose parent account is this, right? So basically what I want is this thing. This query I have to run, right? That name employee role from employee where parent account is this account, right? So that will return to me a list of all the employees who have this account as parent. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Everyone else, did you get it?
Yes, I got it.
Yes, sir.
Good. So now the thing is, I cannot hard code this. Why? If I just hard code this account ID, basically what will happen is, if I go to another account, right, still the same query will run, and what it will show is list of employees of the other account, right? So what I want is some way that my component should automatically get the record ID from the URL. उससे क्या होगा, कोई भी अकाउंट खोलूं मैं, कंपोनेंट उस अकाउंट का रिकॉर्ड आईडी यहां से निकाल लेगा, फिर उसके ही एम्प्लॉइज को खाली क्वेरी करेगा, right? So if I am able to set it up automatically that my component should automatically get the record ID, किसी भी पेज पे हो, कोई भी अकाउंट चेंज हो, उस अकाउंट का खाली डिटेल हो, that I want, right? So how do I solve that? So for that also, what Salesforce has done is it has provided another interface. Okay, and what is that interface? That interface is force colon has record ID. Okay. Now, as soon as I create this, what happens is within this component, I get access to the record ID. How we access that, we will do in the code. But this is how you handle that, by just adding this